Okay guys, so let's jump into retopology. Now, retopology gets a very bad rap because a lot of people think it's a very tedious and boring part of the process, but once you get the hang of it and once you kind of go into ascend mode, you're gonna discover that it's actually not that bad. And once you get more experience and more mileage, you're gonna see that retopology can actually be quite fast as long as you do the proper process. So, what does retopology mean for those of you that are not aware of the process? Well, right now we have this 24.9 million polygon sculpture, and we can't really get this guy into Unreal or Maya for that sake. We need to do a process in which we reduce the amount of polygons that this guy has and get him into a very optimized stage before projecting all of these details through something called baking that we will be looking at eventually, to get all these details in the low poly mesh. So if I go down a couple of subdivision levels, like so, right now we're at 20,000 or almost 20,000 points, which is roughly like 20,000 polygons. And this is roughly the amount of polygons that we want to have for our character, especially these kind of characters. We might be able to go a little bit higher. I think I will go a little bit higher, probably about 40K triangles. So what does this mean? Well, let me jump into Photoshop. You know, I love Photoshop. Every character that we have has a certain amount of triangles, okay? This is called the triangle budget. So once you get into a pipeline and you're working for a studio, for a client, they're gonna say, hey, you know what? This main character that you have, he can only get up to 50K polygons because we're running, I don't know, Unreal Engine 4.10 and we can't handle that many. Okay, maybe you're working for, let's say, the next Uncharted, and they say like, hey, your budget is 100K polygons. So that's a lot of polygons for a character. This is usually what's being used right now for AAA games, about the 100K, but it varies. Now, let's say you're working in something different, like an Age of Empires or something like that. In that case, since you're going to have a lot of different characters at the same time in your environment, they probably will tell you, you know what, you only have like 5K triangles for your budget, or you only have like maybe 20K if you're in a good position. So depending on the client, depending on the budget, the amount of polygons that your character is going to have will vary. That's why we can't depend on this one right here, this series mesh mesh that we got. This is not good for us because if the client wants a lower poly, then we need to do something about it. Now, why is this not useful for us either? There's another reason. The reason is that the topology that the guy has, it's pretty bad. It's really good for sculpture because he has a little bit more polygons and stuff in areas that it needs it the most. But for animation, this is not gonna work. So I'm gonna jump right into Maya right now, and I want to show you why topology is so important for animation before we jump into the retopology of our character. So I have this cylinder right here, and let me duplicate the cylinder, and this cylinder I'm gonna add, let's say, 10 loops right there. Boom. This cylinder has evenly spaced quads all throughout its surface except for the poles right here, which are not that bad but shouldn't be triangles if we can avoid it. And then we have this one. Now let's say we just did Dynamesh or something, and let's cut this guy up. Like, let's have a very weird looking topology. Let's say we went crazy with it and we didn't care for how our polys were arranged, and we got this, okay? I'm gonna turn on wireframe unshaded, there we go. That's gonna allow us to see what's happening right there. I'm gonna go into my front view, and let me grab my rigging tools real quick. Let's create a joint chain. Let's create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bones. I'm gonna place it right in the middle, turn on X-ray to see them, and duplicate and place them right here. Now, I'm gonna grab the first chain of joints, except for the tip, we don't need the tip, and the geometry, and I'm gonna skin it real quick. So rigging, skin, bind skin. It's fine, you don't need to follow this. This is just an example. Let's do it. Boom. And let's do the same for the next one. So we grab all of this, topology, skin, bind skin. Excellent. So right now, these bones, which is what will eventually happen to our characters, are gonna drive this geometry. So if I grab this chain of bones and I bend this, you're gonna see that we're gonna get a very nice and soft bending gradient. because every bone is bending the topology in the proper way. Now check what happens if I have a bad, like a really bad topology. So you might think that this looks or works okay. And at first sight, it might look okay. But if you check the silhouette right now, let me turn off bones and wireframe unshaded. You're going to see that one of those silhouettes is a lot cleaner than the other one. See? Like you're going to have this weird wonky things here and there, triangles going everywhere. And that's going to not only affect our topology, it's also going to affect our textures and everything. Now, right now, both of these meshes have a soft edge assigned to it. Let me get rid of that so you can see even more clear how this looks. So see how this looks very clean, very even, and this one looks, well, super wrong. So we need to make sure that our character has proper topology for animation, because at the end of the day, if your character is going to be animated, which ours is, it's the goal, we need to make sure that the animators can move them properly. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's do the process. Let's get this guy ready for decimation. So remember we saw decimation a little bit in the last couple of series. Decimation is the process that we use to reduce the amount of polygons, because even here, 24 million polygons, it's going to be very difficult for Maya or for Substance to handle, even if we're doing retopology. So we need to bring the number down, like way down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the following. I'm going to go to Subtool. I'm going to turn on my character, fingers, eyes, and teeth right there. I'm going to do merge visible. What this is going to do, it's going to create a new tool up here with the 24, almost 25 million polygons active. This is not an unusual number for a character. Usually characters right now, especially if he has a lot of accessories, it can go up to 50, 60, 80 million polygons. Of course, you need a very strong computer to work more easily with them, but it can be done. Okay, so now that we have this, we need to go into C plugin, and we're gonna do Decimation Master. We're gonna do pre-process current. If we had UVs or if we had a very complex silhouette, we might be able to do freeze borders. But right now, I just want to do pre-process current. Now, what this is going to do is going to analyze the whole sculpture, and it's going to see where there's more details and where there are areas that are maybe lighter in details. So when it sees that there's a lot of detail, it's going to add a lot of triangles, similar to Dynamesh. But remember, Dynamesh gives us a very evenly distributed mesh. Decimation Master is not going to give us that. It's going to pretty much only give us the more triangles where we have more detail and less triangles where we have less detail. Now, this is going to take a while. So while this computes, I'm going to go into Photoshop to show you a little bit of the important things about topology. Actually, let me jump right here. And let me show you Topology 3D. So everyone that has done retopology has looked this up, which is like the basic human topology that we need to follow. And let me tell you, a couple of these ones are not that good. There are some that are actually really good, and I suggest you follow, and there are others that are gonna give you a little bit of an issue. Now, why is it that some of them are not that good? Well, in regards to history of 3D, there used to be a time where the rigging tools and the deformation tools that we had in Maya were not that good. So we didn't have like muscles, or we didn't have corrected blend shapes or anything like that. So what modelers did back in the day was that they tried to pretty much capture the volume and form of each of the muscles in the body in their retopology. That way, when things bend or turn from one side to another, the volume would be conserved properly. However, this is no longer needed, and people nowadays prefer or riggers nowadays prefer just to have like an evenly distributed quad mesh along the way. There are a couple of lines and a couple of loops that we need to take care of, or we need to be mindful of, because they do help a lot in the rigging process. So let me show you while this is going. So let's look for a body front view. There we go. Let's grab this guy right here. We'll just need him for a reference. It's fine. So let's add a quick little layer here. And let's get there. Okay. So what do we need to take into account? Well, this is a very good one because we're seeing the bones, and wherever you see a bone, that's pretty much an articulation. It's a place where things are gonna bend, and we need to be very mindful of what we're gonna do over there. So in regards to bending points in the arm, for instance, when we get to the bones, one thing that's recommended is to add a couple of more extra loops there. So maybe you can have less loops in this area and a little bit more loops here, because once it bends, when something bends in 3D space or in the 3D world, volume is lost. So if I were to bend that stuff, something like this will happen. And this is called the candy wrap effect, where things start twisting and pretty much collapsing on themselves. So if we add a couple of more lines, these couple of more lines are gonna help us maintain the volume as much as possible. This is especially used in the like in games for mobile phones and stuff like that, because we don't have corrective blend shapes or muscle systems that can help us with that. I don't think there are very advanced muscle systems right now for games yet, but eventually we will get there. But for lower spec phones and stuff like that, it won't be possible to do even if we had the technology. So the main points to consider besides the articulations or the joints are the following. When we get to the chest, we need to do, I call it the Batman cape, because we're gonna do something like this. Okay, we need a couple of loops that go pretty much all throughout the border of the pectoral muscle to the back of the character and then connect on the back. Why is this necessary? Why can't we just like cut here and add loops over there? Because when the character raises his arms, we don't want this volume to be lost. And we also don't want this part of the pectoral muscle that we sculpted back here to be a problem either, okay? So we need to make sure that those areas pretty much connect to the shoulder and all the way to the back. You're gonna see this a lot, especially if you see like busts and stuff from video game making offs. Everyone does this because it's very important to keep the volume when you raise the arms of the character. Other than that, we're gonna have very specific loops and whatnot here in the face, which I will cover more in depth once we get there. And the other one, the other important one, it's here on the hips. So on the hips, one loop that I strongly recommend having is this one, and I call this one the Superman underwear because it does something like this. We of course are gonna have like our center line right here, but we're gonna have these loops going pretty much through the iliac spine all the way through the back and the glutes, and this is gonna help the character pretty much move the legs up, because otherwise some people like just like quadding everything like this and pretty much just like a cylinder. That works, but when you try to make a split or make a very dynamic pose, sometimes weird pinches and deformations happen in this area, and if you don't have this like Superman trouser, you're not gonna be able to correct those with any specific blend shapes. Other than that, it's pretty much cylinders, just cylinders all the way. This is the best process now. Remember that I told you that in the past people would try to like loop muscles and whatnot. Right now you don't even have to worry about that. Just make sure everything is evenly spaced and pretty much quadded out like so. Okay, so that's the basics of topology. Now some of you might ask, why is it so important to have topology for our character? Well, for a character it's important because we're gonna animate it. If we are not animating something, then you might be able to get away with just a decimation or something. If it's a rock, if it's maybe a sword or a pillar or a statue, then it's fine. Topology doesn't matter that much at that point because it's not gonna deform. Whenever something's gonna deform, meaning it's gonna bend, move, scale, twist or something, then you need to be mindful about topology. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the video right here while we wait on the Decimation Master. This can take quite a while. I think one of the longest ones I had was like an hour and a half. Don't worry, even if you press ZBrush, and this is important, sometimes ZBrush will tell you it's not working. Wait for it. Just go into your task manager and check for ZBrush. If numbers here on the CPU and on the memory are moving, then you're fine. Okay. Other than that, if everything is like completely frozen and nothing's moving, then yeah, ZBrush crashed and you need to pretty much close it. But just be patient, make sure everything finishes, make sure you have enough disk space because this is gonna save something. I've had that issue before. And once that's done, we're gonna move into the next step. So I'll see you guys in the next video.